Nowhere, from Celebrant. A country of pillow people, fluffy pink dummies and floating television sets hurtling by. Squares of blue light flash past in the night sky. Blood pours down the screen of the television set and drips from the mouths and the hair of the images. A dummy sitting on a chair in a vacant lot full of burning scraps and discarded tires is getting a television set bolted to his face with a heavy steel truss. Dummies gingerly walk down the street, their faces squashed into the screens of enormous console television sets, bolted or strapped to their heads. Without a sound, this one drops down an open manhole he didn't see. In the adjacent laundromat, this one, sitting in one of a row of seats against the wall, is leaking sawdust from the side of its split face. And another one, unable to support the weight of his television set, lies collapsed on the floor, pants having fallen down, and a huge pink cushiony ass hoisted high in the air, his face flattened against blue static. Pillow police wade blindly into a crowd, pummeling and crushing soft elastic faces with boots of polished black rock. In institutions they are rolled out like flab, with rolling pins on zinc tables, kneaded and punched into shape by fuzzy puppet hands. They decorate each other with tinsel that falls right off and go to parties and dances where they flap around, fold and squeeze each other. A pillow boy with a powder blue prom suit printed on his material grabs his pink date by the waist and lifts her up. The stuffing surges to her head so that its material dimples like cellulite. Pillow people sag, drooping from windows like gobs of melting ice cream, flopping from their seats on the bus and bouncing down the aisle as the brakes screech, whole buildings jump up and spin in place or turn cartwheels. The Pillow family has gathered at their tranquil dinner table. They sit, listing this way and that, before plates of braised sawdust, a little heap of white feathers to one side, and a smaller plate of foam granules, glasses of fizzing styrofoam, a plume of smoke rising from the feathers, as they call the father, cigarette. The house leaps up without warning, somersaulting, and they flip and whirl through the air. The furniture crashes into the center of the room, and the whole house subsides and slews open like a rotten melon. The family fly in a circle, arms and legs out like parachuting gingerbread men, and are smashed in on top of each other by the heavy furniture. Police shoot in near unison, guns at waist, emptying their magazines without aiming. Men in room fling up their arms and dance jerkily, shouting as the furniture around them is blasted to splinters. Cut to rhythmic pounding of hand drums. Cops sidle into the room in unison, their fat, wide faces blank, and start shooting as before, ignored and ineffective. The guy who slumps sideways hasn't been shot, he's passed out with boredom. Class of bored kids, bored teacher. The cops burst in, blam, blam, and kids are suddenly flying around. Teacher tearing her clothing to shreds. An old lady fresh from church grabs a police officer by the front of his uniform, her eyes glassy and crazed. "Oh, you just don't know how good it is, that blam, blam!" People clutch at mask-faced cops on the street, pleading for a few rounds. The catchy rhythm of the hammers creates toe-tapping silence. All street traffic is now police cars. Traffic jams of police cars, motionless or barely moving, all screaming sirens and blinding lights, flashing and strobing, probing searchlights, swiveling, plunging into windows, squawking radios. The cops sit motionless in their front seats, their arms at their sides, gazing fixedly at their uniforms to make sure they still look right. The midsummer mail pile, away off a vacation. Two thieves burst the door handle with their jimmy. It spins uselessly. They curse. Entering the apartment, one of them knocks something over right away. Crash. Cackling, he turns and puts his foot through the back of a cabinet. Forgetting all about theft and keeping quiet, they spasmodically wreck the place. Household items, familiar things, furniture all churning around in a mass of broken fragments thrown into a cement mixer. Smashed. Nothing of value. She drove a huge cement mixer silently around for a living, while Swissy just couldn't keep himself from repeatedly being stabbed. It was a curse, must have been. Never too seriously, though. The ambassador slides up unctuously and says, overdubbed, "We'd like to welcome you with this rotten, infected food." "Thank you," someone says, taking the horrifying plate he's been handed and dropping it in the trash. A rickety kick line of cardboard cops, all attached to the same metal beam, comes crashing in, guns level at their flat waists and blasting. "Oh, well," the ambassador cries tersely, peppered with bullet holes. It's not easy walking down the street drunk. So you make it easier by screaming obscenities. I understand. The creamy, rain-darkened concrete of the courtyard melted insubstantially into my genitals. They built the city out of car alarms, sirens, rumbling trucks, booming speakers, helicopters flying by at hair level and hat level. A peaceless scene of mechanized sadness and efficient stupidity, fossilizing in archaic circuitry, cheap buildings, disembodied tension, unemployed by the community as a whole. "You got a P681 over there?" he yells into the phone. "You sitting on a P? Bring it on over." "For export? Exporting what? Bumps?" "I think they have enough bumps, man." A middle-aged bachelor sits scraping morning oatmeal in his kitchen, tapping at the bowl. His upstairs neighbor explodes through the door, eyes starting from their sockets, baseball bat held high. "I'll teach you to keep tapping your bowl!" "Warren, this conversation has gone on long enough. I'm afraid you will have to commit ritual suicide." "Suicide? But that's a mortal sin." "I know, but it's required of you." "Suicide is required of me?" "In part, yes." "What's the other part?" "What do you mean?" "What do you mean? You said, in part, yes. Are you intimating that being eternally damned is also required of me?" "Yes, you must commit suicide and be eternally damned." "I won't do it." "What? What do you mean you won't do it?" "That's what I said, and there's no point arguing about what I mean. I won't do it, no matter what I mean or what you say is required." "You think you can just change your voice and not do what I tell you?" "That's exactly what I think." "You're wrong. You have to do as I tell you." "Yeah? Well, I have a better idea. It's called forget it." "What's that?" "You heard me. I'm not going to do it." "Is that so?" "I think you will do it. I think that the torment of your guiltiness at the thought of your offensive failure to fulfill your sworn contractual obligations that you have sworn to uphold will drive you to it in the end. And I think you've gone totally insane. You honestly expect me to bump myself off for some unspecified misdemeanor that I don't even know what it is, let alone can feel guilty about? You'll do it. I think maybe you'll do it. Me? I think you're the one who's going to commit ritual suicide. I think you're talking about yourself. I think the terrible guilt of torment is your problem, and you're just trying to fob it off on me. That's what I think. Oh, no, you don't. You're not turning this thing around on me. What thing? I don't think there's any thing to turn around, except your displaced homicidal tendencies wanting to convince me to commit suicide. And what you offer by way of rebuttal is the implication that these chimerical homicidal impulses of mine are actually a form of projected suicide? Exactly. Nuts. You've wanted to kill yourself for a long time. I think you're completely out of your mind. No. You want to. That's preposterous. I tell you, I have no intention to... See, you can't even say it. Of course I can say it. Everybody splutters once in a while, and stop trying to manipulate me. I'm not manipulating you. You're manipulating yourself. I'm leaving. It's obvious to me you're completely incapable of rationality. Votu is a forest, scaled by the punctual chirps of birds, whose voices scatter in flakes among the branches. Water drips from the leaves.